Well, it's that period of the year again. After all, November and December are the months of festivities around the world. Obviously, there is Christmas right around the corner, and for the Americans out there, you have Thanksgiving right up there as well. All around the world, this is the period of the year where families gather together to spend time with each other. That is for normal people. For normal, socially well-adjusted people, it is a wonderful season of love and sunshine where families can get together and mingle and catch up on what's been happening in the previous year. But for hobby introverts such as myself, it's like being sent on a 2-month-long penitent crusade on a ship without a galley field. However, ladies and gentlemen, this year will be the year. This year, when your family asks you about your studies, your job, or the prospects of you finding a significant other, you're going to play the reverse Uno card. Yes, this year, you are going to introduce them to Warhammer 40k.
I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
Here's a pro tip. With enough luck and effort, if you attempt this enough times, they might start to respect your personal space a bit more in the future, so it's a win-win situation overall. In this video, it is my job to help you to introduce and convert your family members into the wonderful world of Warhammer 40k. I mean, if anything, you are the one doing them a favor. Don't they know that Warhammer is a new cultural sensation? Did they not know that 40k is the thing now? No, it's not playing with fancy plastic army men, Aunt Mary. This is totally different. Are you perhaps unaware that Henry Cavill plays 40k? Look at how handsome, charismatic, and successful he is. Therefore, by sharing the same hobby, by extension, we are all just as handsome, charismatic, and successful. And for you skeptics out there, don't you worry, because not only do I main world eaters, but I play Dark Eldar as well, so I know a few things about kidnapping and torture. Before we start with anything, we need to first up our mental game. Because as Sun Tzu once said, if your tea tastes funny, you're drinking the paint water. But he also said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. Translated to competitive 40k terms, this means to know your meta lists, find out what your opponent is fielding through whatever means possible, and list the fuck out of them. This means that before we can convince anyone to start 40k, we need to first convince ourselves that dropping $2,000 on funny army man painted red, then another $2,000 on the exact same army man painted grey this time, was a good idea. We need to build up some of that confidence first. And as a charismatic man once said, we need to believe in the man who believes in you who believes in me. Because unlike last year, 40k is not for losers anymore. 40k is for chads now. Like the iPhone, it has now become a symbol of conspicuous consumption. That Space Marine Funko Pop on your shelf next to your Ultramarine army, that's not an incel icon, but that's a monument to your hip and trendy social status. Because this implies not only do you have the disposable income to support the hobby, but you're also a more culturally aware individual as you are now partaking in the current thing. It has hit the mainstream, baby! So do not be embarrassed to talk about 40k in public, unlike some people. If your wacko uncle can confidently talk about how the earth is in fact flat, you too can talk openly about how you want to bring the greater good to the blue fish people, from the end of a bolter. It is not a backwards, grimdark setting, but a finely aged vintage setting with a hint of fanaticism with a light tone of Xenocide. The taste is called Depresso Espresso, by the way. Because no, you're not weird, they're just out of touch. So now with all that out of the way, you must first pick your first target. Who is the most vulnerable? Think to yourself, what would the lictor do in this situation? Luckily for you, family gatherings come frequently, so coming up with a potential list of targets in your head should not be too hard to do. I mean, you do remember things about your own family the moment they step out of the door, right? In case you're having difficulties, here are some key identifiable personality features which you can use to leverage a conversation into being about 40k. Are they an introvert, i.e. bullyable and submissive? This is an auto win. Are they a gamer? Do they like other sci-fi franchises such as Star Wars or Star Trek? Did they in fact try to get you into 40k last year, but you were too polite to say, well, actually, and sat through 30 minutes of regurgitated Bricky and TTS lore, in which case, skip to the end of the video? Are they a streamer? Are any of them rich relatives who look like they have college funds saved up? This one is important because...
Anakin, I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
Now that you know whom you will be inducting into the hobby, you will need to know where you will be doing it. Just like in the war, defenders get a 3x force multiplier because love is war and wargaming is addiction. Why did I add this reference? If the family are the ones visiting you, well, firstly, lock everything up safely. Because unlike the rest of this video, this part is not satire. I have seen way too many horror stories where children and relatives go around causing an uncountable amount of damage to people's hobby collections by playing around with figurines and accidentally dropping them. All I'm saying is that if that happened to me, I'll be taking the Vulcan approach to babysitting any potential Eldar cousins. But after making sure that everything is secure, this is an excellent chance for you to show off your cool, nicely painted models. They are painted, right? Right? Your objective here is to shock and awe them, inspire interest, and tug at their heartstrings with a bit of FOMO. Basically everything GW marketing tries to do in a nutshell. As the host, the limit is time and your imagination. You can set up a small demo game if you're able to facilitate it, or even make some 40k inspired cocktails or finger food if you like. Some Cornish pastries or gingerbread knot should give you ample openings for you to lure an unsuspecting family member into your hobby cave dungeon. However, on the flip side, if you are the ones visiting, things will get trickier. Pro tip, you may be tempted to take your kill team or boarding action army to your relative's place and set up a sort of a demo game with your extended family. This is a trap, since both these games are kind of annoying to take around due to their reliance on terrain. Trust me, I've tried this. Have you ever seen a kill team starter boxes? It is my personal opinion that it is GW's shitty way to make people buy certain specific overpriced terrain. Not to mention that your reputation in the family is bad enough without you trying to further sabotage yourself by building fantasy castles out of utensils on a dinner table. Like you're some kind of proverbial perturabo trying to show off your science projects to your dad, while the rest of the family just wants to sit down and get fed. So my tip to you is do not take what does not fit in your pockets. For example, mobile phones are a great invention because they allow you to call your relatives when you get lost while driving to their place due to their bullshit directions every year. It is not your fault that their instructions are worse than GW's own instructions for the Orc Stomper kit. But more importantly, it allows you to share your hobby photos with other people, and it is an excellent narrative device to sell them about what a good time you were really having while coming in last place at your most recent 40k tournament. You have been patient. It is now time to deal the killing blow. Step 1 was like building your army list, where you had to come to terms with a lot of planning and abstract theoreticals. Step 2 was the deployment phase, where the value of real estate and terrain is recognized and taken advantage of. Now it is up to you to play the actual game. Do you remember all the key features you've identified from Step 1? This is where they come into play. According to Google, rapport is defined as the relationship in which the people or groups concerned understand each other's feelings or ideas. This is the key as it helps you build trust and credibility. It is the bridge needed to help you help a relative cross over from the state of mental well-balance to absolute plastic debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery!
And by plastic, I mean both the models and the credit card. For example, statistically, on average, 50% of the population are gamers. Well, Space Marine 2 just released, so why don't we pop right into my hobby room where I can show you my cool Space Marine collection and tell you about the lore of that color scheme. You know what? Before that, I will have to teach you about the Horus Heresy as well, and the War in Heavens. Oh, you've already played Space Marines 2? Well, don't you want to know more about the Ultramarines? And so on and so forth. Perhaps they are a streamer. In that case, you can suggest to them that Warhammer is indeed very poggers right now, and hobbying on stream is good content. No cap. And speaking of confusing mainstream trends, is your potential 40k initiate perhaps a weeb? Well, great, because 40k is the next big thing in VTubing right now. Don't believe me? Look at VTubers such as Sheena and Matara, who has dived headfirst into the hobby. Oh, and look, Mori Calliope herself was painting her first 40k model just last week. Don't you want to be closer to your Oshi by partaking in this glorious hobby? Maybe she might even pay attention to you without you having to make an Akatsupa should you paint your army in the same color scheme and post it on Twitter. So allow me to introduce the lore to your Oshi's faction, to you, so you can razzle and dazzle her when that moment comes. What is an Oshi? I have no idea. I think it's European for gay. Are they a Star Wars or Star Trek fan? Ask them how they are liking the franchise. If they say yes, they're a damn dirty liar.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Ask them again, more firmly this time, until they give you an honest answer. When they say no, assure them that they will be better off in the Emperor's warm embrace. Soothe the Star Wars fans' fear by telling them that 40k is a setting that is carved in stone, and nothing like what happened to Star Wars will ever happen here. And if by any chance should they be a fan of Dune, politely correct them that Dune and Starship Troopers were based off 40k. Actually, do not do this, but it's kind of hilarious if you do it. But seriously, you might want to extract yourself away from the Dune fan immediately because you're probably out power leveled here. Remember, the goal here is to build enough rapport and pique their interest enough to the point where you can just start sliding in lore video links, dank overused memes, along with your own hobby photos as that final personal touch to their Telegram or WhatsApp or whatever the hell young people use nowadays without coming off as a weirdo. Rome was not built in a day, and the horse heresy didn't spontaneously happen. It actually kind of did, but whatever. This is why you should not worry if you fail to convert anyone into the hobby overnight.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
As with chaos, the seeds of temptations are now already planted, and all it takes now is the occasional sprinkle of water for it to flourish. Because with how vast the setting is, there will be something there to tickle the imagination eventually. Here's another tip. You may have another family member who are familiar with and or also play Warhammer. You can coordinate between yourselves before the gathering with the goal of deep striking them in turn 2 to prevent your prey from leaving engagement range with you, or at least to tag more relatives. Before I go, here are a few final tips. If your goal is to get them onto the tabletop, consider taking them to a GW store, where you can make the employee do 90% of the work. I call this the substitution teacher method. But be sure to keep a close eye on the staff to ensure that your new hobby buddy is not led astray by the staff and start doing something that they will regret later, like picking Space Marines for their first army. On this note, sometimes there is such a thing as faction anxiety. You can ease this anxiety by recommending a faction to them that you are very good at playing against. It would also be remiss of me to neglect to tell you that research from the Iron Warriors Research Foundation headed by the Warpsmith Hanso shows that Chaos players are 50% to 100% more attractive than your normal Imperial Space Marine players. I bet you did not know that. But seriously, Space Marines are a trap since everyone will get Space Marine models eventually somehow anyways. It's like using talent points in an RPG on a talent skill that you know you will get for free down the line anyways. Also, if it's a girl that you're trying to bring into the hobby, for some reason chicks like to collect Tyranids. I do not know why, but every single girl that I have met who collected 40k has been a Tyranid player. Maybe someone can comment on this observation down below. Perhaps people play what they subconsciously identify as. Now for final tip number 2, reinforce the messaging. Remember to send them funny 40k memes and lore video links at least once every hour to fortify the indoctrination into the hobby. If that is too much work for you, just like the substitution teacher method above, you can do the same here by sneakily subscribing them to 40k channels, like this one, so 40k videos clog up their entire recommendation page. Tickle the side of the brain originally meant for productive problem solving and put it to better use by subconsciously rewiring it by sending them ironic meme army lists with the words, "This might work." Keep track of their progress by asking them if they have built their models yet. Ask them if they have painted it yet, despite your own pile of shame, because it's about them, not you. With all these handy tips in hand, soon you will be meeting each other on the tabletop, playing games, making experiences, and giving each other shit for your opinions on whether female custodies is canon or not. Heck, if you're really productive, you might even browse a 40k wiki together for about half an hour and suddenly feel qualified enough to start your own lore podcast channel. Postscript Hereticus here. So this was originally meant to be a more serious video, but after the last video, I decided I wanted to make something a bit less dour and a bit more uplifting. I had to redo most of the script, so apologies for the late upload here. But another part was inspired by the fact that while I was doing research on this topic, I noticed that a mere few years ago, a lot of people online were genuinely finding it difficult to introduce people into this hobby. It seemed like the hobby was like the reverse summoning spell from Harry Potter, where just saying its name would cause people to flee in the other direction. Quite unlike today, where it feels more like there's a surge of fans coming in, since it's a new cultural trend. And nowadays, if anything, if your family or friends know that you were into Warhammer and are interested in the setting themselves, it's more than likely that they'll be the one approaching you without prompting. Don't get me wrong, this is all a good thing. Which makes me think that on one hand, I feel like 40k, if it was a bit more affordable and accessible, it could really be the next big phenomenon like Star Wars, for example. But on the other hand, like with the iPhone analogy made earlier, some of that popularity lends itself to its apparent value and exclusivity. Not just with the price point, but the time needed to understand the lore as well. So what do you guys think? Anyways, we've had a few videos focusing on the hobby side of things this month, so we will be going back to the lore mines with the next one. Take care wherever you are. I'll see you guys in the next one.